What defines a civilization is that the present generation is fighting to correct the historical injustices committed against our ancestors. If there is no Hitler road in Tel Aviv, then why the hell are there roads in India, cities in India, institutions in India named after these barbarians who committed genocide?
It's so ironical that just very close by to us there would be a Babur Road, there would be Akbar Road, and so on and on. And somehow, this complexity of the Stockholm syndrome is deeply ingrained within us.
How come the Babri Masjid existed much before Aurangzeb?
Oh, there was no Babri Masjid before that, actually, because the travelers who came in here, they made a very clear, like we look for the record, the Flinch is talking about a Ram Janmasthana, Mandir being there. For the first time, we see that in the era of Aurangzeb, when a mosque just pops up. And even Abul Fazl also talks about the existence of the Mandir there. There is no mention of mosque whatsoever.
Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be back here again. And at the outset, I would like to thank the amazing students of SRCC. It's absolute joy and pleasure to be here back again. And of course, with my very good friend Aabhas, who's written a real masterpiece, one of first of many. Um, we are going to be talking about Babur. First of all, can we clarify from the organizers which Babur are we going to talk about? Babar Azam? Yeah. जो 2 घंटे में उसकी पिटाई होने वाली है कौन से बाबर की पिटाई करनी है 500 साल पहले वाले की या अभी वाले की दोनों की but let me answer, and you know, I want to contextualize the discussion, Aabhas, because abhi a movie has been released and you know about Sambhaji Maharaj, and so much controversy has erupted. I want to talk about what we are going to talk about in that context, because I think that would be very illuminating to our audience as well, and will bring out as many fiery and frank questions, that is what we want. So first up, I want to ask you, is there a Hitler road in Tel Aviv?
Jai Shri Ram to everyone. Maybe it sounds ironical that I am the biographer of Babur and I am saying Jai Shri Ram to start with. And as rightly said by Dr. Ranganathan, we will not find a road in name of Hitler in Tel Aviv. You will not even find it in Germany, perhaps, nor you will find it in USA. If you do it, you can imagine that what will happen to you. In fact, right now, when I'm coming up with new book, which is called Hitler, the proclaimed Messiah of the Palestinian cause, it was very tough for us to come to the name of the book as well, because search engines just may not help us to promote the book because Hitler is such a name. But it's so ironical that just very close by to us, there would be a Babur Road, there would be Akbar Road, and so on and on. And somehow, this complexity of the Stockholm syndrome is deeply ingrained within us. It right from the days when we got independent, the first thing perhaps should have been to get back all the temples. But what we did is that our prime minister goes on to call Babur as one of the most cultured man. And isn't it so ironical too? Because he promoted Ashoka to a large extent. And the first man to attempt to destroy the Bamiyan Buddha's word, this man Babur, and he showers the praises to Babur, and he also showers the praises to the Ashoka and the Buddhism. So I don't know how the context for our understanding of history was set. Perhaps we were set in a dark gallows. We were set to just praise the people who invaded, who murdered, who killed the people, who plundered, who destroyed. And still, whole bunch of people have come out to shower the displeaseful thing about Shambhaji Maharaj. And again, you still have the Aurangzeb the people who praise Aurangzeb. And I have to give it to Professor Irfan Habib, because he was not so much in praise for Aurangzeb. When you look at the Marxist historiography in the Mughal period, they clearly say that the reign of Aurangzeb brought the end to the Mughal Empire. They were not the fan of Aurangzeb, but the new breed of the new Marxist, whether the Truske School of Architecture, sorry, pardon me, I'm an architect, Truske School of Historiography or whatsoever, it has ingrained a new people or a new breed who are an all praise for Aurangzeb. But perhaps Aurangzeb himself wouldn't have been so happy to be praised in a way, the way they are praising him. Perhaps they would have lied in some place like how Shah Jahan lied, and they would have died such death. And so, yeah.
So, as I said, I'd like to contextualize it, and that was the first of many questions, Abbas. Because, of course, you would not find a more authoritative book on Babur, first of many. So, yes, all of you must pick up this book. But, of course, it's very difficult to condense everything that this book talks about, cries in the wilderness many times, in half an hour. And we have only half an hour before I throw it open to questions. But the first question I would have thought was quite probing, because if there is no Hitler Road in Tel Aviv, then why the hell are there roads in India, cities in India, institutions in India named after these barbarians who committed genocide? It's such a simple question. Now, I'm a free speech absolutist, but I dare say 99.9% of Indians are not. So the question is not on me. The onus is on you to explain. Because you rightly, when I talked about Tel Aviv, you rightly said there isn't there, but you also mentioned the word Germany. Now, Germany has very stringent laws for Holocaust denial. In fact, 6 months ago, they imprisoned someone who denied Holocaust. Holocaust, is the Nazis perpetrated this genocide that killed 6 million Jews during the World War. That man was sentenced to 2.5 years of prison. And 3 years before that, German courts sentenced a chemist in Max Planck Institute who denied Holocaust, 5 years in prison. This is Germany, Western Europe, and we are supposed to not have as much free speech as Germans do. Not only that there is a law against Holocaust denial, and you can go to prison. Even if you glorify or celebrate Hitler's Nazi rule, you can be imprisoned up to 3 years. How many of you support illegality or a law against glorifying Aurangzeb and other barbarians that committed a genocide of 4.6 million Hindus murdered? Right. So this is not a Hindu-Muslim issue. This is the problem. The moment you talk about justice, the moment you talk about bring in another nation that is supposedly past the tests of justice and natural justice and free speech, Germany, Western Europe, and you quote this, and Germany is, by the way, just one of the dozens of countries in Europe, Austria is another, that have laws, stringent laws that have as conviction punishment up to 5 years, 6 years for denying the Holocaust. Now, as a free speech absolutist, I'm fine with denial of Holocaust. I actually am. But the point is, if you are not a free speech absolutist, then why the hell are you supporting Germans and not Indians when they want a law against people celebrating Aurangzeb and what he did? And some horrendous memes are circulating in the last 1 week. They are so offensive. When they talk of, they're almost celebrating the torture that Aurangzeb committed on Sambhaji Maharaj, the artist, the art, you've seen, and those are journalists who are celebrating this. I really want to understand the psyche, because the fact is that 99% of the Muslims we have in India, their ancestors were Hindus. Now, what has brought this thing that they have become more Islamist than even some in the Middle East? Is there some kind of a complex that they suffer from, that their ancestors converted and majority ancestors did not? What is it? Is it gloating? Is it what? Is it an endowment of their scriptures that says that others, other religions that are supremacist, exclusivist, that believe in you cannot worship anybody else, you are like cattle, like animal if you're a non-Muslim. I want to understand the psyche because every youngsters are doing this. You can imagine 80, 90-year-old ignorant people who've been brainwashed, who doing this. But there are youngsters who are celebrating the gruesome torture of Sambhaji Maharaj, eyes gouged out, tongue cut, skinned alive. And they're celebrating Aurangzeb doing it. What is the psyche, Aabhas?
And such is the irony that what is shown in the film is perhaps not even one third of the torture what Sambhaji Maharaj had faced. And it's well elaborated in the works of Manushi, who was an eyewitness to it. It's well elaborated in Masire Alamgiri. It's not something which is in the books of history, it's out there. Of course, there are also the people who are deniers of this torture. Many said that it is a figment of imagination when the memes were being circulated, while many gloated at this fact that he faced this torture and perhaps Aurangzeb is the greatest of all the time. There are memes like that too. But there were the memes which also said that is a figment of imagination. Both the side, what they did is try to really dehumanize the Hindus as much as they could. And because in the previous question we were talking about Hitler, you will surprised to know that Hitler once had said, is confided to Himmler, that it was fall of the Germany that it did not Islamize. When the Muslims came here, they should have won it, and whole world should have become Mohammedan, because Christianity is a religion of the meek and the weak.
Sorry, was it Hitler or
Hitler.
Owaisi?
Hitler. It's Hitler who is saying it in 1939, and he just wished that whole Germany would have been Muslim, and not just Germany, whole of the Europe should have become Muslim. So this does speak of the psyche to you, that one of the most evil man whom we are talking about, whom we have been talking about since at least post World War, because earlier people did not know how bad Hitler was, is praising Islam, is praising the whole Mohammedan cult, and he's saying that this should have spread everywhere so that we have been the powerful lot. He later on even went on to create fractions which would later develop into the Hamas later, which will become Al Qaeda, ISIS, and everything is an imprint of what Nazis did, the way they weaponized the Islam to a large extent. And he saw this power only in Islam, nowhere else. And he puts it on record. So perhaps that gives you the answer that why there is so much gloating on the wounds which our rulers face. They always take, it looks like a fantasy come true to them.
Are you for an Indian law against celebrating a barbarian like Aurangzeb, like Holocaust denier laws exist in Germany? Are you for a law?
So if I put it very clearly, I completely agree for the complete freedom of expression. It does not matter to me that way. But the problem is the pick and choose business what people get into. Like if we talk about the moment the literature would have come through that Shivaji Maharaj slaughtered the pigs into the mosque, which is also the reality, people should know it. He was not as secular as people want to make him. He slaughtered the pigs in the mosque when the temples were being destroyed and the cows were being killed. In fact, destroyed a lot of mosques. Perhaps if this literature would have come earlier, then they would have called out Shivaji as a bigot. Or perhaps if Shivaji would have been living in the current time and say a response would have come in that way, then that man who does the similar act would be branded as bigot. So you are doing pick and choose business. Then in that case, it's not absolutely not for you if you're not supporting for the freedom of speech. But I'm completely in for it. It does not matter to me. But history should be let to be as it is. It cannot become the tool or the weapon to do your politics.
You know, that's the point. And we are amongst the youngsters. And there's one thing that I've learned is that never ever patronize them. It'll come back to bite you. So I always speak the truth to them. They are our future. And if they are not told the truth, if they are not indulged in a frank conversation, then this country is lost. I mean, what's the point of having a debate? So, this is what I want to ask the youngsters. And I come back to this question: why would any youngster eulogize or celebrate a barbarian? It is beyond me. I cannot, because that's very troubling in one sense. It's almost like you're celebrating Hitler, you're celebrating Pol Pot, you're celebrating Mao. Oh, I'm sorry, communists celebrate Mao, so that's another matter. Now, you see where brainwashing gets you. You have a man who murdered 63 million people of his own ilk, the Chinese, Mao, and you still celebrate Mao. You have a man who murdered 10 million of his own people, including a lot of others, Stalin, and you still celebrate Stalin. You have a homophobic mass murderer, Che Guevara. You celebrate him. If you do not, learn from history, if you do not learn the truth that is there in history, you will go on a separate tack. And that is how nations weaken. So I come back to this. There's so much brouhaha about Aurangzeb, and you read Vikram's new book on Tipu Sultan. I mean, you read Tipu's own words. Forget about Vikram's words. Tipu's own words was that annihilation of the infidel is the sacred duty of every Muslim. This is Tipu Sultan, and you're eulogizing him. We have Tipu Jayanti, we have festivals. You know, you come from. So there is no marked grave of Hitler. There is no marked grave even of Hitler's parents in Germany. But here we have a mausoleum or a mazar for Aurangzeb. You have Owaisi going there and, kind of paying his obeisance to Aurangzeb in his grave. You have thousands of people going there. I don't understand this psyche, and this is what is troubling and devastating. It is not Hindu-Muslim that destroys a country from inside. It is not discussing Hindus or Muslims that destroys the country from inside. Be frank. What have you got to worry about? Why are you shying away from the truth? And yes, the truth can be, egregious on both sides. Atrocities were committed, but you would be wrong to draw a false equivalence, as many are doing now. People have picked up, अरे Marathas ने Bengal में भी ये किया, सारा झूठ पेल दिया एक ही बार में सब, औरंगजेब को बचाने के लिए, Buddhist, अच्छा आप राम जन्मभूमि टेम्पल चाहते थे, what about all the thousands of Buddhist shrines that were destroyed by Hindus? Not one example exists. लेकिन वो equivalence ले आए बीच में, Jha ka as a historian, So why don't you just let history be, read from it, become the wiser, and not peddle your agenda? And I want to swiftly come to Babur, because another very troubling revelation has come out in the last couple of days, which is, about the Sambhal mosque, and the temple for Kalki that supposedly was destroyed and a mosque by Babur built over it. Factually correct, right? 2 days ago, we learned that people actually wanted to. So Vishnu Jain, the advocate Vishnu Jain, was an amazing person who's done more than most in fighting for Hindu civilization and dharma. And he's, quote unquote, a minority, he's a Jain. So a meticulous plan was formulated to assassinate Vishnu Jain when he went to survey the Sambhal mosque. It is scary. These things are happening. And whom would you put the onus on? The people who still deny the reading of history, because they are the ones who are brainwashing these people who want to kill Vishnu Jain. Why would anybody want to kill Vishnu Jain? All he's done, and this canard that is being spread, कि आप mosque में शिवलिंग उखाड़, you're physically digging. No one's physically digging. Survey doesn't mean digging. Survey means finding out what the history is telling you. कल को क्या होगा, यही लोग कहेंगे, don't read this book. These are the people, they accuse the right wing of burning books and all that. सबसे ज़्यादा books तो इन्होंने burn करी है. Because they are the ones who are troubled most by books and the truth. So, again, not just Ram Janambhoomi, but Sambhal also goes back to Babur. Would you tell us a little bit about the history of Sambhal Mosque and what Babur has got to do with it?
So, in terms of history, which is going to be revealed in my part 2 of the book, but I will still scratch the surface of it, just to give heads up to the people. One problem has been with the whole history reading is we try to find the heroes, and by the same process, devil or the villain will automatically come out, because hero can't exist without the villain, and a villain cannot exist without a hero. So we are the culture of hero worshipping and finding a villain, and the same goes to the other culture too. So, it was around 6 months back or so, people were picking some excerpts from Manuchi's writing, who was very confidant of Aurangzeb, trying to make a case that Shah Jahan had explicit sexual relationship with his own daughter. I pointed out that please don't pick those sources because it has already been debunked by a lot of eminent good historians. When I say eminent, literally eminent, like K.S. Lal, etc. They said that it's all the hearsays of the mullahs of the court of Aurangzeb. He just want to make the bad name for Shah Jahan, so that's why those literature have come up. And I was cautious, I was quite clear that why I'm saying it, because the same literature goes on to character assassinate Sambhaji Maharaj. And it was all again a lot of hearsays because these people were not exactly witnessing neither that what's happening inside the jail cell where Shah Jahan was, nor they ever witnessed that what is the life of Sambhaji Maharaj. So it was all the hearsays. So the problem in the history understanding with the social media has happened that if we find something in a blog, it becomes like a material to us and people want to push it as a history. Same has happened with the Ram Janmabhoomi too. It has happened with the Sambhal case too. Of course, it was a mosque in Sambhal which was created. It was more of a creation during the period of the mutiny, say 1857, when they took the mandir because mandir was very much known, and Abul Fazl talks about it. That is the place where the avatar of the Vishnu or the Krishna will come through. Abul Fazl is coming after Babur because he's a historian for minister for Akbar. And while he's talking about it 60, 70 years after Babur has gone, he's talking about a temple which is there. There's no mention of mosque whatsoever. We have got a archaeological survey of India report in 1879, which says that a mosque has come up there, but it is more of a recent phenomenon. It has been created recently, and the archaeologist points it out that the local Muslims are making false claim about a false. This is one of the biggest forgery. If you see that the inscription which talks about Babur, they have even written the name of Babur wrong. That inscription is so wrong that it does not even spell the name of Babur himself correct. Babur itself correct. Had Babur been the man behind it, he would have certainly not written or got his name written wrongly. It is a wrong inscription entirely. And post 1879, further, in fact, Cunningham also speaks about it that Muslims are making a false claim that this was built by Babur. And when they went to the court, as in the Hindu side, they showed this false inscription and somehow they won the case. So this mosque was nowhere to exist before the 19th century, and a false claim was made to it. But yes, a mosque was created. Now, if
So
I
Babur did not demolish the Kalki
yes,
temple.
Babur did not do it because he was here just for a span of 4 5 years. We find the mention in the work of Beveridge, who is the one of the first and foremost translator of Baburnama. It comes in the footnote where she mentions that Hindu Beg goes on to destroy the mosque. That's just the footnote. It's not even the part of the Baburnama. Neither it. I have accessed the original Persian manuscript, so it does not talk about it. So the point is not whether Babur is good or bad, because there is enough material which shows that certainly he was an evil man for Hindustan. But as a person who has been the victim, I recognize myself as a victim here because I am a Hindu and my faith was defiled. So I need to know that who the actual perpetrator was. I don't see Babur as a one, and I will not hold him responsible. But yes, the mosque was brought in, it was taken from the Hindus. And a similar forgery, in fact, happened in the Ram Mandir too, which I am revealing in my Babur too. And most likely it was Aurangzeb who destroyed it. And what's very interesting is when you look at all these mosques made in Hess, say that when you go to Mathura.
Aurangzeb destroyed the Sambhal
No,
temple.
no, Aurangzeb destroyed the Ram Mandir probably, which existed, and Sambhal Mosque was taken over by the local Muslims in around post mutiny phase. And these all is elaborated very well in the Archaeological Survey of India report. It's out there for us to see. And being a student of architecture, I know that what kind of plaster was used in a certain period. So, and also what kind of plaster which you will do in a hest and what kind of plaster you will do when you are building something in a piece. So you don't find the luster in.
Sorry to come back to this,
Yes.
because ये तो पूरा जज्बात बदल दिया. Or if Aurangzeb was destroying
Yes.
the Ram temple,
Yes.
how come the Babri Masjid existed much before Aurangzeb?
Oh, there was no Babari Masjid before that, actually, because the travelers who came in here, they made a very clear, like we look for the record. The Flinch is talking about Ram Janmasthana, Mandir being there. for the first time, we see that in the era of Aurangzeb, when a mosque just pops up. And even Abul Fazl also talks about the existence of the mandir there. There is no mention of mosque whatsoever. And there's a category in which
But there
Aurangzeb.
is a mention because in the Supreme Court judgment in the annexure.
It's in an extra what beverage had got. So I will tell you about. So most of these translators were behaving as a normal employee of today.
Sorry,
Reporting.
we are digressing, but it's so interesting because history is like that. You go from
So
one hyperlink to the other.
so everyone was reporting to their reporting manager. Beverage, all the academy. If East India Company was not very evangelic in the nature, academicians were surely the very evangelic in the nature. So they had this against the Hindus and also against the Muslims. So when Beveridge went on overboard to add the footnotes, collect the documents, it was a very strong case to talk about the earlier empire which existed and the founder of it. So she brought a lot of documents. So in fact, she got a note from the magistrate of the place which talks about, and there's a whole story of this inscription too. And when you will refer to the translation of Beveridge, she says that Mir Baki Tashkandi comes to see Babar from Awadh with his army. When you go back to the Persian manuscript, there is no mention of Awadh whatsoever, and Mir Baki Tashkandi was not the general. The whole attribute of the person itself has been changed. Whole history has been changed. So again, I have nothing to support Babar, nor I have anything to support the Islamic group of that period. But and I surely believe that, as I said, that if I have been the victim, I really need to know that who the perpetrator was. If it more aligns toward the Aurangzeb, being a student of history, I will do the methods of triangulation. And again,
When you talk of being the victim, and of course, it's always important, and I said one of the what defines a civilization is that the present generation is fighting to correct the historical injustices committed against our ancestors. That is what civilization is. So yes, all of us must feel as victims if our ancestors were hard done by, because what else is civilization?
yes.
So it's true. And that is the reason why in January of last year, I saw 15-year-olds dancing in the streets of Ayodhya, celebrating, the consecration of Ram temple. And I said, well, 500 years ago, something happened, and they're celebrating something that is connecting there. And that is what civilization is. So when you talk of victim, I want to turn it the other way around, because of one of India's greatest uh, female actors, Swara Bhaskar. She's the one who's recently, of course, retweets are not endorsements, but she's endorsed or retweeted a flurry of tweets that has such astonishing claims made against Sambhaji Maharaj. Sexual assaulter, destroyer of temples. Can you clarify about this Maratha destroying temples for one last bloody time? I'm sick of this thing coming up again and again and again.
Two things come up. One is Maratha doing it. Second is the destruction of the Buddhist places by the Hindus.
But the Marathas doing it is
Yes.
more important to debunk.
Yes. So I'll pick one example of say Sringeri, which is one of the easiest thing which anyone can find. Like the story which goes that it was destroyed by the Marathas, say the Pindaris, and they say the Pindaris are still the Maratha cavalry, so they are to be considered the Marathas. And Pindaris were the people who were hired mercenaries, who in fact worked also for the Timurids, not Mughals actually. And also they were in the army of Alwardi Khan in the Bengal. So they were the mercenaries who worked for everyone. And when the temple was desecrated in the Sringeri, the news reached to the Peshwa, and he was very anguished for what has happened, and said that I am going to compensate everything, and whoever has done it will be given utmost punishment which is required to be done. And so now Tipu was always aligning to the Sringeri mud because he had his astrologers sitting there, and he got to know that what is going to be my future. He was more like a superstitious person, if you put it this way. Maybe that for the lack of the vocabulary, I use the term superstitious, and that's the reason why he always wanted to protect this very temple. And making the villain out of the Marathas goes back to the period of say one lecture which was put in 1992 by one Mr. Pandey, and he presented a list of 153 temples in which the donation was given by Tipu Sultan. And also this case of Sringeri come up and the Marathas had done. So when he was asked about the source, he got back to the vice chancellor of Mysore. And when you look at when that very vice chancellor was in the Mysore University, he would have been an 18-year-old boy, the man who was making this claim. So this 18-year-old boy got hold of a list of this temples from this vice chancellor. It's just
So yeah, I
unimaginable.
mean spurious. But
Yeah.
to come back, I'll
I'll
come
come
back
back
to
to
Marathas and
yes.
Bengal. But just to clarify once and for all, from the horse's mouth, is that mercenaries who were in the Maratha army went and pillaged the Shringeri Mutt. The Peshwas were incensed that this has happened. They went forward and said, "We are going to rebuild it.
Yes.
We're going to compensate the people who've suffered, and we're going to punish the people who've done it." But before they could do it, Tipu, because of other reasons that he had his astrologers there,
Yes.
he went ahead and paid some,
Yes.
sent some money so that it could be refurbished.
Yes.
That's the truth.
Yes,
once
that's
and
the
for
truth.
all.
And it comes from the Shringeri's record itself. It's
Okay. So
very
next time somebody tells you that Marathas were the ones who've destroyed temples, you can at least quote this, right? Now about Marathas going around and pillaging Bengal. What's the truth of that?
So again, the point is the Marathas were invited by the local fraction of the people who were aligning against the Alwardi Khan.
Which year was this?
It is coming around the early 18th century. So that's the phase in which he has been invited. And by the way, Alwardi Khan is the predecessor of Sirajuddaula. And it so happens that I'm just digressing a bit, but I must tell a little about Sirajuddaula to the people so that they can
Very quickly,
understand.
because we're going to throw open. So just this thing about
Yes.
did Marathas destroy Bengal?
Not very clearly. They did not destroy. Is it portrays that, because the again the Pindaris, there's a different name for local name for the Pindaris in that fraction. So they were the one who went on to pillage. They destroyed everything. So that was the nature of the people with whom the Marathas were working. Maybe that we can call out Marathas for having the aid of those uncivilized or whatsoever term we may like to call it. So they were the one who did it. Of course, the atrocities did happen. There is no denial to it. And people may again bring Jadunath Sarkar into the picture because he's one of the person who all we see in a very steamlight. But maybe that he also did not had the access to the very entirety of the document, and he could not present the whole thing at much ease as we could do in the time of now, maybe because for the resources and everything which we have. And Marathas certainly did not destroy the Bengal. It was more because the Pindaris, Bargis or something is the local name in that region. And even the local term, local narrative which also goes through, they take the name of the Bardis. They don't talk about the Marathas.
Okay, so last question before we invite the audience to ask questions about this Buddhist shrines being destroyed.
So I have done it a number of times, and so whenever you go and say that, okay, Kashi Mathura was destroyed by the Timurids, the Turkic, they will bring to you that it was very much tradition of India. Hindus भी ऐसे ही किया करते थे. They will destroy the temple. So this process of value engineering continued and continued and continued. They just added more nuance to the value engineering done by the Hindus of the past. So the first name comes about the Pushpamitra Sangha. It is said that the poor chap, poor Brahmin, Daridra Brahmin, destroyed around 84,000 stupas. Now, how many years did Pushpamitra Sangha rule? If you find it out, just divide it, do a common math, you will find that he will need to destroy one stupa every 4 hours. It starts from there. So later on, when Professor Thapar edited her books, revised her book, revised edition came, she said that Pushpamitra Sangha can
Which
know.
Professor Thapar?
Romila Thapar.
Okay. I thought you were about Karan Thapar.
He is not okay. So she makes it clear that it will not be wise to call Pushpamitra Sangha for having done so, because the moment you pinpoint Pushpamitra Sangha, the same reference takes you back to the Ashoka, because Ashoka had also done a lot of crimes that way. He had destroyed a lot of places, he had killed a lot of people, Ajivikas that faced the wrath of Ashoka, according to that very source. So if you are selective about Pushpamitra Sangha based on this source, why will you leave out on Ashoka?
But that doesn't answer
Yes,
the question.
I'll come to it.
completely.
Now, Pushpamitra Sangha technically did not do it, which can be proven by this method. Now, Romila Thapar also aligns with it. You take the example of Harsha of Kashmir. Now it is said that I think that we had this conversation. Then Aarti ji said that Harsha has a record of it. So then I told you that Harsha also Harsha's record is not something as plain as what people want to present it. In Raj Tarangini, Harsha has been called a Turshka, as in the Turk. He is aligning with the Turkic thoughts, and he does not destroy only Buddhist places, he destroys the temples too. So when you're talking about the Harsha of Kashmir, you should also talk about the temples of Hindus, what he destroyed, not only the Buddhist places. When you talk about the Indra too, destroying the Buddhist places, if you go to the primary source, which people meticulously quote in the footnote, go to the primary source, you will find that primary source says that the elephant, which was in the army of Indra, accidentally destroyed some places of the temple. It cannot be compared with what Aurangzeb did in Kashi and Mathura. Not it can be compared with Tughlaq did. There is no comparison at all. Because if you want to base a claim that Hindu was destroying something, you have to find a base in the theology or the scriptures that we assign you to do it. But the holy book of the Abrahamic, the most recent Abrahamic cult or religion, indeed talks about the destruction. So Sitaram Goel had posed 8 questions to Romila Thapar, and of course it was also to some other historian, that not to Irfan Habib that period, that those 8 questions still remain unanswered. So those questions appear as an appendix to the book of what happened to the Hindu
Hindu
temples.
temples.
And now that Sitaram Goel is no more with us, but still Professor Thapar is very much alive. Ever you people are in Delhi, ever you go on to attend that seminar or something, just throw that page of Sitaram Goel. Still, it's been 3-4 decades, but still you have not answered. Will you care to answer those questions? What he was saying is that I have done a lot of analysis on the primary sources of the Turks, the Muslims, and then I have come to a conclusion that this is why the Muslims did it. I also give a reason that why they are doing it. Now, using those parameters, you have to justify, or rather tell to us, that how the Hindus would have done the same to the Buddhist places. So that remain unanswered. It still
So
remain unanswered.
I suppose it's very clear to the audience. This spurious false equivalence being drawn time and again when people are discussing the barbarism of Aurangzeb, of Babur, of destruction of temples. This equivalence that, oh, look, Marathas were also doing it. Oh, look, Hindu kings from Kashmir to other places were also destroying Buddhist shrine, is complete bunkum. I hope that is clear once and for all. Can we now, Aabhas, throw it open? I think we have another 15-20 minutes to questions, please. Yes.
I'm Diya. I'm from Sri Venkateshwara College. Thank you so much for addressing the concept of gender in the last session. It was great. So, my question is to you, sir. Sir, because you hail from science background, and today we were talking about history. So, what association and what commonalities do you find between the two disciplines? Where do you think they both intersect in terms of, do you think that history is both subjective and objective? And how open is history to interpretations? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, look, I firmly believed, in fact, it's the case where I say with journalism as well, there ought to be more science in history and more history in science, and I believe if you were to study every subject with passion, that is all that is required. To pigeonhole people into a scientist or a historian or something is going about the wrong way. I mean, sometimes I've been stirred so much by facets of history than by science. So, I don't really like to pigeonhole myself, or I wouldn't want to pigeonhole anybody else as a historian or a scientist or anyone. And in fact, it's the greatest excuse people have, people who practice those professions. So you would have seen many who diss, for example, Abbas, are architect hai, history likh raha hai, don't talk about the person who's written a book or the person who's saying something. Critique what is being said, critique what is being written. And this is the problem with a lot of established historians have on the left or something. They say, oh well, what's this guy, what are his degrees, has he read even history, has he? No, you read about the book that that person has written. Might be an architect or could be anybody, scientist, film personality, god knows, whatever. Think of what has been written, and if you have the guts to, then you rebut it or critique it. So that is my starting point. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
So myself Rudraksh Das, and I'm a law student from Whips Law School. So as we know that the concept of secularism is, sir, first of all, my question is to both the panelists and especially to Anand Ranganathan, sir. So as we know, the concept of secularism is just not Indian. It is a distinction between church and the state. So even as a law student, I get this question that why is our constitution a product of a cut copy paste exercise? And we just try to modify it and Indianize it more and more. So तो वही वाली बात है जैसे सोनिया गांधी पॉलिटिक्स करवाती हैं. And then, so as we talk about an originally written Indian constitution, sir ऐसी कौन सी गवर्नमेंट है जो ये सच में कर पाएगी? What do you think on this matter?
ओके ये आउट ऑफ सिलेबस सा आ गया बाबर से सीधे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे आ गए बट नेवर माइंड आई विल आंसर इट बिकॉज आई लेट्स थ्रो इट ओपन टू एनी क्वेश्चन दैट एनीबडी कैन आस्क इवन ऑन द जेनेसिस ऑफ लाइफ ऑन अर्थ आल्सो आई डोंट माइंड बट कमिंग बैक टू दिस it is one of the most ridiculous things I have seen Indians do right from every politician serving or retired or to every judge serving or retired. India is a secular state. Arey bhai, we are not secular. We are not. Do you not understand that you have to go by what the definition of every word or the etymology is? We are plural. There's nothing wrong with being plural. Why are we ashamed or why do we have some sort of inferiority complex if I were to say India is plural? Somehow they feel that अगर secular कहेंगे तो better है plural से, you know. तो complex उनमें है. Secular means complete demarcation, a line between, as you said, church and state. State being the government and church being the religion. We are not secular. Here the government is doing 10 things that do not make it secular at all. And I'm not even going into the things that it's doing that are blatantly discriminatory against Hindus. I mean, how can a state control Hindu places of worship and yet call itself secular? Is this some joke? How can a state pay monthly salaries to imam? And Delhi was doing it for 10 years. अब वो बढ़ा भी दी थी 18,000 per month कर दी थी. Maulvis went on strike कि केजरीवाल झूठे वादे कर रहा था वो तो just one of the झूठा वादाs. But what is the government doing paying monthly salaries if you're calling yourself secular? Why do we have Hajj subsidies? Why do we have iftar parties? Why is this present government having a budget of thousands of crores for minority appeasement, giving interest-free loans to people to set up shops on Waqf land? You know, the secular state doesn't do it. I'm not saying don't do it. You can do it. It's against my wish. But if you want to do it, don't call yourself a secular state. It's a joke. So, you know, any chief justice से लेकर हर कोई secular state कह रहा है मतलब it's just gets my goat. So we are not secular. Yeah. Aabhas, you'd like to say something?
This is completely out of syllabus for me, yet I will say some words. So, again, going by the history, if you find that the etymology of the word secularism, where it comes from, when Martin Luther first described it in detail, when he was watching for the separation between church and the state, he gave a directive also to the state, which is secular. The secular state has the role to control the unchristian activities. It's coming from the horse's mouth, Martin Luther King. So, what does it mean? If you put that framework, say, मान लो कि हमने उठा के word secular डाल दिया, and we take it from where the definition, then if it is say the Hindu is the majority, then it is supposed to control the un-Hindu activities, though there will be a separation, which we are not making as well. Like we put a lot of course, if the temples are being controlled by the government, how can it be secular? Because there is no separation between the church and the state, right? And as you read about the development of secularism in the United States of America too, in fact, the founding fathers are very much aligning with the church thought, and they are very much in this line. But secularism developed a lot when you pick the definition from the French idea. Perhaps that is one of the most appropriate, if at all we want to talk about, where you have got an absolute separation with church and the state, And exactly, we don't have these anomalies like giving up the fund for the Hajj subsidy and whatnot. And if you are controlling the temples and you have a law like the Waqf Act, and you have got something like Places of Worship Act, state cannot be considered secular at all, even by that French definition. So somehow you pick definition from any Western angle, where it comes from, you never fit anywhere. So it just does not make any sense to
I
me.
mean, I would like India to be secular state, you know, but India is not a secular state.
So my name is Tushar Sharma, and I am from MSCC postgraduate program, Global Business Operations. And sir, as we know, Jay Sai Deepak sir and Vikram Sampath sir stated that there are about more than 40,000 temples which are being demolished, and mosques are built on them. And it's our duty to look after each and every shibling out there, whether it is underground or over it. So, sir, I want to ask you that what is your perspective on the legality of the Places of Worship Act? As despite numerous petitions concerning the surveys of historical monuments such as Qutub Minar and Taj Mahal, and there is still continue to be a significant delays in the ASI surveys and the talks regarding it. And sir, do you attribute these delays to the shortcomings within the judiciary or the policies of the current uh, Hindu government and the lack of initiatives among the people?
Current Hindu government. So no, let me say this. I don't see this as the fault of judiciary at all. It is that this government is a cowardly government. Does that answer your question? It's full of cowards. इनमें हिम्मत नहीं है देखने की कि क्या सच है और क्या झूठ है. How is this a democracy? The hallmark of democracy is that any citizen is allowed to knock at the doors of the courts. If you remove that sentence, you are not a democracy. So, how are 1 billion Indians prevented from knocking at? I don't care what the judge does later on. जज कह सकता है कि भाई ये संबल मॉस्क थी हमेशा. जज कह सकता था, हालांकि judge can be blind. I know just lady justice is blind, but judge also can refuse to see the vandalism of Kashi Vishwanath and the Gyan Vyapi mosque that sits on top of it and still say this was always a mosque. Let the judge say it. But at least the case should be heard. This is a travesty of justice happening. And why has this government left it to the courts to decide? If you believe something is right, go ahead and do it. And this is the same problem this government has with the Waqf Act. अमेंडमेंट के लिए डाल दिया, अब उसको वहाँ जेपीसी में डाल के पता नहीं कहाँ वो ऊपर गोदरेज अलमारी में ऊपर सड़ेगा 10-15 साल. बट यू लुक एट द साइकी of why they were saying we need an amendment to Waqf Act. Look at the psyche. The psyche was not कि it is blatantly discriminatory against Hindus. ये साइकी नहीं थी. ये कह रहे थे कि अरे मुस्लिम्स भी काफी करप्शन कर रहे हैं वक्फ एक्ट में. वो मुस्लिम इस्लामिक करप्शन हटाने के लिए अमेंडमेंट ला रहे हैं. अरे क्यों बोल रहे हो ऐसा यार? 3 लाख एकड़ से 10 साल में 9 लाख एकड़ हो गया. It's a parallel government being run out there. This is, again, I say, of course, I have been branded so many things that I take it as a badge of honor. But 99.9% of the things are not to do with Hindu-Muslim at all. It's to do with justice and what is right. अगर आपको डर लगता है तो आप ये labels इधर उधर फेंकोगे. How is this a religious issue at all? You having blatantly discriminatory laws, and it's not to do with the Hindu government or non-Hindu government. It's to do with the government being cowardly. That's all it is.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, my name is Manav. I'm from Chitkara University, Chandigarh. Sir, I have 2 questions. Sir, the first question is for Dr. Anand. Sir, we talk about Hitler, but not Idi Amin today. Sir, we talk about Babur, Aurangzeb, but not the atrocities by the Hindu kings too. In the era of British, there were kings in Punjab that supported British against the Indians itself. So we are selective. Even in the international level, we are very selective about it when we come to talk about it. As we are speaking about it in this prestigious event, but a common man of India does not have the access to such events on daily basis. But what they have access to is NCRTs. NCRTs already glorifies the Mughals. So it's the 3rd term of BJP government. As you yourself quoted that PM Modi has done more for the Muslims than Hindus. Yes. So then who should we look up to? As victims, who we look up to correct these things? And so my second question is to Abbas sir. Sir, I just searched that when did Ashoka become Buddhist? Was it before Kalinga War or after it? And I got 15 different answers on Google. So how can I identify which history is true and which history is not?
Okay, I'll let Aabhas answer that question first. Um, Authoritatively, I think either 4 years or 8 years before the 4 years before the Kalinga War. So Ashoka was a Buddhist. And if I ever catch that guy who जिसने मुझे ये ज्ञान पेला कि अशोका कन्वर्ट हो गया बाद में I mean, it's the most severe test of ahimsa, I tell you. I am a non-violent guy. लेकिन 40 साल तक मैं इस झूठ में पलता रहा कि इतने लाखों लोगों को मारा और फिर हिंदू किंग ने मारा और फिर वो ये देख के इतना उसको शर्मसार हुआ कि वो बुद्धिस्ट बन गया. वो 4 साल से बुद्धिस्ट था. बुद्धिस्ट किंग ने मारा था. बट इज दैट राइट?
So he was already a Buddhist when he went on to do the carnage in Kalinga. And this comes from the inscription, his own words, where you find the evidence for it. So you did not go through the Google or now the new villain AI or anywhere else for history. You can directly refer to the reference about the inscription, and you can if you pick the work of Charles Ellen, who is more like a hagiographer of Ashoka. He's not even a biographer. He has praised Ashoka like anything. So there he himself admits using the same inscription that Ashoka was already a Buddhist when he, or more like a lay Buddhist who had already began to align with the Buddhist thoughts, who went on to do the things in the Kalinga. And
Thanks. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
उड़ीसा की कलिंगा यूनिवर्सिटी में अभी नेपाली छात्र प्रगति लामसल की जो है बेरहमी से उनके हॉस्टल रूम में वह सुसाइड पाई गई थी. वहाँ पे जिस तरीके से रणवीर इलाहाबादिया के खिलाफ कार्रवाई हुई थी जितनी तेज़ी से, वहाँ पे ऐसा नहीं लग रहा है कि उड़ीसा में उतनी तेज़ी से कलिंगा यूनिवर्सिटी के खिलाफ कार्रवाई हुई है. 100 से ज़्यादा FIR रणवीर इलाहाबादिया के खिलाफ हुई है, पर अभी तक यूनिवर्सिटी पर सस्पेंशन ऑर्डर नहीं हुआ है उड़ीसा में. वहाँ BJP की सरकार है. तो मतलब ये बेहद सीरियस कंसर्न है कि विदेशी छात्र किस आधार पर भारत में पढ़ने आएंगे जब उनकी सुरक्षा जो है ठीक ही नहीं है.
Sir, I absolutely 100% agree with you. I mean, this is, yes.
Good afternoon, sir. So you said that Lady Justice is blind. So last year, Lady Justice statue unveiled by the SC was without the blindfold. So the Lady Justice is not blind anymore, metaphorically. I don't know about the reality. But if being a victim has been universal, that is getting marginalized by the perpetrators, why is it that being a Hindu as a victim is treated very differently than as a Muslim as a victim? I don't know, it might be a controversial question, but yes, that's my question.
First of all, let me clarify this. No question is controversial. The idea of something being controversial is entirely the figment or imagination of the observer, not the subject. मैं सच बोल रहा हूँ, आपको बिटर लग रहा है, वो आपकी प्रॉब्लम है. मैंने सच बोला, आपको controversial लगा, तो आपकी प्रॉब्लम है वो. So please be absolutely fearless. It's not, you've not asked anything controversial at all. You've asked a great question. और इसमें again, at the risk of going to Tihar once again, at the contempt of court, this country is a banana republic because the Supreme Court is a banana republic. I'll tell you why. Twice, the now former Chief Justice, thank God for that, he was the one who refused to reopen cases of criminal atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus during the genocide that they suffered. The reason he gave was too much time has elapsed. He was meting out justice with time. 6 months after that Supreme Court order, the Supreme Court itself ordered the setting up of an SIT to look into the cases of criminal atrocities against Sikhs in the 1984 genocide. That happened 6 years before the Kashmiri Hindu genocide. What can be more blatant than that? So, of course, there is discrimination against Hindus. But again, I say, I go by the Anderson razor. Everyone has a philosophical razor. You must have heard of Occam's razor. I have an Anderson razor. You know who Warren Anderson was, the butcher of Bhopal? I don't blame Warren Anderson for escaping. That is what criminals do. That's the job of, in fact, I would have been embarrassed अगर criminal भागता नहीं है. चोर नहीं भागेगा तो और कौन भागेगा? पुलिस. वैसे पुलिस भी on the run थी वैसे. महाविकास अघाड़ी में police commissioner was on the run. But I don't blame Warren Anderson. I blame Rajiv Gandhi for making him run away from India, for providing him an ambassador on the tarmac in the middle of the night and a chartered plane so he could fly away and never come back. So I don't blame the Chief Justice. I blame this government. आपको दिख नहीं रहा जो सच क्या है, झूठ क्या है, discrimination क्या है, और आप औरों पे blame डाल रहे हो. So the fate of Hindus has been sealed by Hindus themselves.
When we talk, even if we speak facts, Nupur Sharma, then there happen so many riots, so many nuisance is being created. But when they mock our gods, they get great careers in comedy, and their fans are Hindus. So I just want to know that as a society, when I feel bad about it, what others like me can do so that this doesn't happen, and what should be happen? Just a small question.
So this is a great question, and I thank you for asking it, because it has to have a response that you have to think not just in the next 2 minutes, but possibly days. How do civilizations progress? Civilizations progress not by regressing, but by opening up, but by having the idea that anybody is free to say whatever they want to say, right? And that is the endowment of Hindu civilization, right? So if somebody is criticizing your gods, if somebody is abusing you, if somebody is burning your manuscript, I wouldn't say welcome it, but I would say don't punish that person. What are the societies that punish such people? They are the regressive societies. They are the ones who are afraid of the truth. They are the ones who have something to hide. They are the ones who are not forward looking. So I think it is great that in this country, we, of course, as I say, we are not a free speech country at all. We prosecute free speech, but I would like this country to be as open about discussing all these matters as any country is. The problem comes, and this is also a true problem, and sooner or later, as I say, tolerance begets intolerance to the extent that the whole country becomes intolerant. You are seeing it in UK right now. People are being arrested for tweets. You saw it in Germany the other day. You saw it in India the other day. Some IAS officer said something and the remark behind the reply was ha ha, and that guy was arrested or sacked. So the problem is not with Hinduism. The problem is with Abrahamic religions and one aspect of it that doesn't allow this openness. Now you go and ask, what is better? Do you want openness or do you want a closed society? That's why I say don't worry about my response. The response has to come from you. And I think it is glorious that we can sit in this country and have an open discussion, or could, until Nehru amended the first, the first article or the first amendment to the Constitution. Article 19 it was, free speech. They are the people who worried. They are the people who are to be proclaimed guilty of curbing and stifling freedom of speech and expression, not you, not us.
So right now a question was asked about the KIT University, and so just to give you the perspective around it, while the whole state machinery went behind Ranveer Allahabadiya case, you don't have any much about the KIT. You don't hear anything about the Palgar Sadhus anymore. It's gone in the dust. So it's all about the priorities. And if you really scuffle the freedom of speech, perhaps you will not be able to discuss about the vitriolic nature of the philosophies at all which exist out there. And if they are not discussed, you will never become a good society. So freedom of speech should be absolute. You just can't curb it.